Why is the front windshield bigger than the rear view mirror? Because when you're looking forward, there's a lot more to see than looking behind you. Hey, hello, I'm Tony Jalen. Thank you for joining us for another Rare Leader conversation. I'm joined by my incredible partner, my esposa, my best friend, Danielle Jalen. Good morning,
Good
Danielle.
morning.
Good. So today we're going to talk about how to move forward. And it's just coming from a personal experience. And I want to start out with this thought. Have you ever stopped to consider that a lot of the reasons why people don't become who they want to become is because they're so attached to who they've been? I'm going to share that one more time with you. Have you stopped to consider that a lot of the reasons why people don't become who they want to become is because they're so attached to who they've been? When I share that with you, Danielle, what thoughts does that bring to you?
Well, I think a lot of times when you think about who you want to be, that takes a lot of work to get there. And you look at where you're at and you're like, you know what? I've done pretty well. Like, why make that change?
Yeah. I remember last year when I was leading a division, sales division, and it was probably in October of 2011. And the truth of the matter is that we were consecutively for many years a top performing division in our region. And I had this feeling inside of me that we could do more. And I had to sit back and ask myself, well, how come I hadn't done more? And I had to get honest with myself, and I realized because it was going to take a lot of work to get to that level, to that level of achievement. And I asked myself, wow, am I willing to do that? And I said yes. And I really started to go ahead and reshape my mind, wash it again. I made a mission to read 2 books every single month. I was listening to podcasts like crazy, and we grew year over year 58% in just 1 year. And I think part of the reason why I was in the place that I was is because I was stuck into what I had done versus focusing on what I could do and what I wanted. And I think you don't want to discredit the past. You don't want to discredit the things that you have achieved. But I think sometimes we got to stop and say, you know what, though? There's still so much more to live. And Neil and I were just talking about recently about dream building. And I remember when I was in my 20s, one of my mentors said, never stop dreaming. And we had a great conversation last week about, you know what? How can we dream build more again? Like, how can we go ahead and do that? Because there was times in which we'd like go tour homes and think about all the places we'd go and see. And the craziest thing, we've been blessed to have achieved and experienced all those things. But then again, is once you're there, how do you move to the next phase? How do you go ahead and say, okay, the past is done, it was great, or maybe it wasn't great? I think sometimes when you look at that, we think about the mistakes we made or things we've done. It's like, hey, who am I to go ahead and go to that next level? Who am I to go and deserving of that next thing? I think you can look at both sides of those coins, don't you think, Danielle?
Yeah, I think it's easy to think that those, like, the better things are for other people. And like, who am I to think that I can have that? And then also to be like, I do deserve those things. I've been through so much, and not that I'm entitled to it, but that those things shall pass. And whether it's good or bad, like there's always something coming down the road for us that is there for us to experience and to continue to grow.
I think, and that's the big point right here is like, again, why is there a lot of reasons why people don't become who they want to become? Is because they're so attached to who they've been. You may not have been that person who was that speaker. Well, who says you couldn't be? You may not have been that successful business owner who says that you couldn't be. You may not have been that top salesperson or whatnot who says you couldn't be. And I think a lot of it comes down to really understanding, okay, choosing a focus, number one, and going all gas, no brakes on it. Saying, this is going to happen. I believe with every ounce of my body and soul and spirit that it is going to happen. It's a must. And I think it all starts with taking that first step. And sometimes that first step is uncomfortable, isn't it?
No.
No, it's not. Tell me more. Tell us more, Danielle.
Well, because it starts to unravel like different things that may have to change, and I think that sometimes just taking that first step is pretty scary because now I'm committing myself to something different than I've been used to. And the thoughts start to swirl in like, what if I fail? What if this doesn't work? What if this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing? It's just easier to stay here where I'm at. And so I think sometimes just, taking that first step and just shutting the door, there's no way back and just continuing to move forward sounds great, but at the same time, it's super scary.
I think it's super scary too because of the fact you may not see progress with that first step. You may not see progress the first 10 steps. And then the mind, like you said, is going, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, why don't you just go back to that 10 steps ago? Because that was a lot more comfortable. And I just a funny story. We were working on some stuff for our home, and I had to go ahead and call our mortgage company to go ahead and get the claim filed. And I kept on thinking, oh, it's going to take forever to make this phone call. It's going to be on the phone for 30, 45 minutes, and I got to do all this paperwork. And honestly, I probably invested way too much time in that first step. And all of a sudden, deadline's getting close, and Danielle's being great and giving me those gentle reminders. And I'm like, all right, it's on my plan today. I'm going to do it. I'm just deciding to do it. And it took less than 3 minutes. And I'm like, really? Really? So I think the question we got to ask ourselves is, what story are we telling ourselves today? And then the second question, is there facts to that story? Or is it just a story? How do you get through that portion of it?
Sometimes I think it just is a wake up call. Like, you really have to be honest with yourself in the fact, like, who I am today is not who I was in the past. And accepting that, and maybe those things that served you in the past aren't going to serve who you are today, to continue to help you move forward and to be really mindful of how you are showing up for yourself. And, is it serving you to stay there? To be honest with yourself, like, takes, I think, a big step forward in who you are, being intentional and like really just being honest, like to be able to take those steps forward.
But being honest with ourselves can be one freaking scary. And two, people go, well, I don't know what I need to do. And when people say that, I think there's some truth to it. But I think inside of us, we know the answer, don't you?
Well, I think it's I don't know what to do. And I think you really do know what to do because it's, if you've been thinking about it and then you're asked the question, what do you think you need to do? I don't know. I think that the I don't know has been weighing you down and keeping you where you're at. And if you truly want to make that change, that's something that you will come to grips with.
Tell us more about that. Like, What do you mean that I don't know has been weighing you down?
Well, I think if you take a look at, your attitude and the things that you've been doing or not been doing, um, to make changes and to move forward, like if you are really honest with it and you're like, I bet if you said, I don't know, and you asked again, like, just think about it. Like, what is something that you could do right now to make a change? Like, you'd be able to come up with something because you know that in your mind, you've been thinking about it and you
Yeah,
don't want to actually accept it.
there's truth to that. I'm looking at my one word this year is diligent. What's your one word again?
Consistent.
Consistent. And it was interesting. Last week, I asked myself, like, how have I been diligent, honestly, with myself? And I'm like, well, there's some things I have been that I have on my vision board. I have it on my little, I get to look at each night. I'm like, man, but what if I was really diligent in these other areas? But what if I just chose this one area and just went, all gas, no brakes on it? Would it look like right now? I think that's sometimes the benefit of social media is you can see someone start something and all of a sudden you see all this progress they're made and they're like, holy smokes. And you're like, well, I could have done that. Well, then how didn't you? Like, what stopped you from doing it? And I think part of it, of letting go in the past is like Danielle said, is being like calling where you're at, where you're at. I think that's the first step. This is where I'm at today. No frosting on the cake, no saying, oh, but because no, this is where you're at, period. Black and white. Call it what it is. If you're an outsider coming in, okay, what would they call it as it is? Because they don't have no extra context to add to it. And then secondly, just ask yourself, okay, where do I really want to be? Where do I really want to be? If it's a year from now, I mean, we're halfway through the year now. A lot of people set your goals. Where do I want to be and why? And I know we may have shared that numerous times on these calls, but I think it really comes to that simplicity is why do you want to be there? Because if you don't ask the why around the goal, I think it's easy to set goals flippantly, just to set them to set them because they sound good. Oh, it sounds good. And then also when you don't do them, then we get frustrated because we didn't do it. And the reason why we ask why is like, hey, are you really going to will? Is it something that has enough meaning to you that you're willing to go out the extra mile to do it? And then I think the next thing is if you don't do it, what's going to cost you? Because we can figure that out, can't we?
Mm.
It's like my son and I were doing yard work a few weekends ago, and it was hot, and those weeds weren't, getting any shorter. And I was sitting and doing the front flower bed, and I sat to myself, you pay now or you pay later, and I'm paying later right now because I could have done it in a lot nicer, cooler weather. I chose not to. And finally, one day, I'm like, I made a decision that Saturday. I'm like, okay, this is gonna happen. And I think that's part of it. And why? Because I'm like, I don't like not having a nice looking lawn. I mean, heck, and it's by the way, our lawn is not gonna win a Better Homes and Gardens award, but it's better than it was. So I think the first step is, trying to letting go of the past. You can use that to give you the confidence that you did this in the past. So that means you can do it forward. It's within you to do it forward, and ask yourselves why and what's the cost of it. What would you add to letting go of the past? This is something that we're constantly working on ourselves.
Just understanding, like, and listening to the signs that are given to you. Like, you may be questioning, what changes do I need to make? Or what do I need to let go of? Or what do I need to do to move forward? Like, if you truly are paying attention stuff is given to you, and you may be comfortable with what you've done in the past to be where you're at, but just really truly understanding like that was maybe 5, 10 years ago, and you are 5 or 10 years older now. And what worked for you then, times change. Like, not everything that worked then, if you're not willing to evolve to where you are today, um, you will stay stuck.
Sort of like that TV repair guy. You know, it's interesting whenever you see those TV repair stores. I mean, one, it looks like the windows haven't been cleaned in 30, 40 years. And it's like, wow, you're like, people actually still go to those stores because you just buy a TV and cost you gets it fixed. So I think that what Danielle made is that good point. It's like, you're not the same person you were even yesterday. Heck, I'm not even the same person I was 3 minutes ago, because 3 minutes ago is gone. And I think if we just take a moment, get a piece of paper, journal it, get a cup of coffee, and just say, you know what? Here am I at, where I'm at in these different areas of my life. My health, my wealth, my relationships, my spiritual place. And do an assessment. And it may not be fun. And you may want to make it seem better than it is, but go with the answer that actually came in your gut. Just do it. Because as the thought we said earlier said, a lot of the reasons why people don't become who they want to become is because they're attached to who they've been. And thank you for joining us for another Rare Leader Conversation. Join us next week. And I know it'll be banger. It'll be great. It'll be great because Danielle is on the call. Until next week, I'm Tony Jalen with
Danielle Jalen.